The Galactic Federation officially classifies habitable planets on a scale from Class 1 garden worlds to Class 15 literal hellscapes. Most Council species evolved on comfortable Class 2 or Class 3 worlds with minimal environmental pressure, stable weather patterns, and predators that politely ask permission before attempting to eat you. Then there's Earth, a Class 12 Deathworld. "It's not that bad," Jake Harrison said defensively, leaning back in his chair at the orientation seminar. "We've only got one moon, minimal tectonic activity, and our star hasn't gone nova even once." The blue-skinned Alluvian administrator, Dean Telix, blinked all four eyes simultaneously. "Mr. Harrison, your world experiences extreme temperature variations that would kill most sentient species, regular atmospheric electrical discharges, periodic flooding, and contains over 5,000 species that can directly kill a humanoid through venom, poison, or physical trauma." "Yeah, but we've got Netflix." The Dean's translator struggled with the reference but moved on. "Furthermore, humans evolved as persistent predators capable of chasing prey until cardiac failure, can regenerate damaged tissue, survive the loss of entire limbs, and continue fighting despite injuries that would incapacitate any reasonable species." Jake nodded. "We call that Tuesday." The rest of the alien students shifted uncomfortably in their orientation pods, appendages inching away from the lone human in the room. This was the 73rd cycle since humanity's acceptance into the Galactic Federation, and aliens still treated humans like they might suddenly start eating people's faces. Which, to be fair, had happened exactly once, and that guy had been really drunk at an interspecies frat party. "Mr. Harrison," the Dean continued with what passed for patience among Alluvians, "you are one of only 12 humans accepted to the Intergalactic Academy this cycle. Your scholarship is contingent upon following safety protocols and not." He consulted his datapad, freaking out the jellies, as your predecessor so eloquently described it. Jake gave a thumbs up, another gesture his alien classmates flinched at. Apparently, the rapid extension of digits was considered threatening among some species. No freaking out jellies. Got it. Orientation concluded with the usual warnings about environmental controls, compatible food sources, and emergency decontamination procedures should different species' biological materials come into contact. Jake collected his room assignment and headed for the dormitories, earning nervous glances from his new classmates. His assigned room was on the diverse atmospheric floor, which meant it could support both oxygen breathers and the occasional methane enthusiast. When the door slid open, Jake came face to face, or more accurately, face to eye stalks with his new roommate. A Zeridian. Great. They were notorious for their nervous temperaments and tendency to secrete defensive mucus when startled. Hey there," Jake said, keeping his voice low and his movements slow. "I'm Jake Harrison. Earth. Looks like we're roommates." The Zeridian's eye stalks quivered. "Trelos Vim, Zeridia Prime." "You're human? A Deathworlder?" His voice sounded like a piccolo being played underwater. "Yeah, but I promise I only eat other sentients on holidays," Jake said before he could stop himself. Trelos turned a pale green color and began oozing slightly from his pores. "That was a joke. Sorry, human humor. I'm completely harmless." At that exact moment, Jake's luggage arrived via automated delivery drone. The case popped open to reveal his personal items, including his prized souvenir baseball bat from the Yankees World Series win. Trelos took one look at the wooden club and promptly retreated into his hibernation pod, sealing it with what sounded like 17 different locks. Jake sighed. It was going to be a long semester. Professor Xanthar slithered into the comparative xenobiology classroom, her serpentine body gliding effortlessly across the polished floor. Jake had learned that she was from a moderate gravity world where her species had evolved from arboreal predators, which explained both her graceful movements and her unsettling habit of hanging from the ceiling during lectures. "Students," she announced, her forked tongue flickering between words, "your midterm project will involve presenting a representative example of your homeworld's fauna to the class." A ripple of excitement passed through the room. The Centaurian twins vibrated their wing cases in delight. The Orlean blob pulsed with enthusiastic bioluminescence. Even Trellos, who had maintained a 3-meter safety distance from Jake since becoming roommates, extended his eye stalks to their full length and interest. You will present the biological adaptations, ecological niche, and evolutionary significance of your chosen creature, Professor Xanthar continued. Her vertical pupils narrowed directly at Jake. You may bring a living specimen, provided it meets all quarantine protocols and safety measures. Jake felt his stomach drop. Living specimens? From Earth? Even the tamest Earth creatures would seem like monsters to these people. As the class ended, the other students bubbled with excitement about their presentations. I shall present the harmony beetles of Orlos, announced the pulsating blob beside him. They sing in perfect 7-part harmony and can predict astronomical events through their melodies. My selection will be the thought-sharing clouds of Centauri Prime, one of the twins chittered. They form symbiotic relationships with all creatures beneath them, sharing dreams and memories. Jake grimaced. Everything from Earth killed, ate, or parasitized something else. It was just how terrestrial biology worked. Even koalas had a bite force that could crush bone. The class would pass out if he showed them a honey badger. Back at the dorm, Jake found Trellos hurriedly gathering his belongings. Are you moving out? Jake asked, trying not to sound hurt. Temporary relocation, Trellos explained, eye stalks twitching nervously. Just until the xenobiology project is complete. I heard you'll be bringing an Earth creature here. I haven't even chosen one yet. Precisely the problem. The uncertainty is causing my mucus glands to overproduce. Trellos gestured to the slime trail leading from his study desk to the door. My species evolved on a predator-free world. We're not equipped for surprises. Jake sighed. Look, I promise I'll pick something harmless. Nothing with claws or venom, or a tendency to disembowel things. Trellos paused, all 4 eye stalks focused intensely on Jake. You realize that the fact you need to specify no disemboweling is exactly why I'm concerned. Fair point. But I really will choose something safe. After Trellos departed to stay with his cousin in the methane breather wing, Jake collapsed onto his bed and pulled up the Earth Biodiversity database on his tablet. He needed something that wouldn't trigger mass panic among a classroom of species that considered paper cuts life-threatening emergencies. It's time to find the least deadly thing Earth has to offer, he muttered. This should be fun. The Academy's library terminal displayed thousands of Earth species as Jake scrolled through options. He'd been joined by a few curious classmates who watched over his shoulder, providing unhelpful commentary. What's that one? Asked Plex, a crystalline being who communicated through light pulses and translator tech. Bengal tiger, Jake replied. Definitely not bringing that. It appears magnificent, Plex chimed. Why not? Because it weighs 300 kilograms, has dagger-sized teeth, and routinely ambushes creatures from hiding before breaking their necks with a single bite. The crystalline being's structure clouded momentarily their equivalent of fainting. Perhaps something herbivorous? Suggested Glix, a multi-limbed Arcturian whose species evolved from something resembling a cross between a starfish and a fern. Good thinking, Jake agreed, filtering the database. He stopped at an image of a moose. This is a plant eater. Glix extended a sensory frond toward the screen. This seems reasonable, they broke off as Jake scrolled to a video of a bull moose charging a car and flipping it over. By the 7 moons. It destroyed that transport vessel. Yeah, moose have anger management issues, Jake admitted, continuing to scroll. Maybe something smaller? He paused on rabbits, but the video of them frantically mating made his classmates uncomfortable. Sloths moved too slowly to seem threatening, but their claws were problematic. Turtles seemed promising until someone asked about snapping turtles, forcing Jake to explain that yes, some Earth turtles could bite fingers clean off. What about those? Asked a gaseous entity named Zephyr, pointing to an image of golden retriever puppies. Jake brightened. Dogs. Perfect. They're domesticated companions that we've selectively bred for friendliness. You intentionally altered another species' genetics to make them friendly to you? Zephyr's gas cloud condensed slightly, and what Jake had learned was disgust. It's more like mutual evolution, Jake defended. They helped us hunt. We shared food. Now they live in our homes, play with our children, and alert us to danger. You keep predators in your dwellings with your young? Plex's light pulses became so erratic the translator glitched. Jake sighed. Look, this puppy is the least threatening thing I could possibly bring. Golden retrievers are literally bred to have soft mouths so they don't damage the birds they retrieve for hunters. His classmates exchanged what passed for glances among their respective species. You use them for hunting other animals, Glick stated flatly. Not this one. This would just be a puppy. 3 months old, barely weaned. The most dangerous thing it could do is pee on the floor or chew a shoe. After much debate and multiple assurances that no, the puppy would not suddenly metamorphose into a larger, more deadly form during the presentation, but his classmates reluctantly agreed this might be acceptable. The bureaucratic process was another matter entirely. Jake spent 3 days filling out interstellar transport permits, quarantine applications, and liability waivers. The Academy's insurance department required him to sign a document accepting full responsibility for any mental trauma, physical injury, or existential dread caused by exposure to a Class-12 Deathworld organism. By the time all the paperwork was processed, Jake had almost convinced himself this was a good idea. The puppy would arrive just before his presentation, be kept in a containment field until needed, and return immediately afterward. What could possibly go wrong? Presentation day arrived with all the festivity of an interstellar cultural exchange. The classroom had been modified to accommodate various specimens, with containment fields, environmental controls, and emergency evacuation routes clearly marked. The first presenter was Zephyr, who released a cluster of floating spores from their homeworld. The spores drifted gracefully through the air, occasionally merging and separating while emitting soft musical tones. The harmonic sporelings of Nebula 6 exist in a state of permanent symbiotic communion, Zephyr explained. They never compete for resources and will sacrifice individual units to maintain collective harmony. Next came one of the Centaurian twins, presenting a transparent jellyfish-like creature that changed colors based on the emotions of nearby beings. The empathic floater forges telepathic connections with all life forms, the Centaurian explained. It nourishes itself on positive emotions and releases healing enzymes when it senses pain or distress. Jake felt his anxiety rising with each presentation. Every species seemed to have evolved alongside the most gentle, cooperative creatures imaginable. Even the predatory species presented were polite about it, a flowering plant that asked permission before absorbing nutrients from nearby organisms, and a small furred creature that sang its prey to sleep before painlessly extracting a single drop of blood. When Trellos presented a 6-legged herbivore that communicated through interpretive dance and could mathematically calculate stellar orbits, Jake seriously considered faking a sudden illness. But then Professor Xanthar was calling his name, and it was too late to back out. Next we have Jake Harrison of Earth. A Class-12 Deathworld, she announced, her tongue flicking more rapidly than usual, a sign of anxiety among her kind. Mr. Harrison will be presenting what was it called again? A golden retriever puppy, Jake said, moving to the presentation area. A juvenile domesticated canid. The specimen transport officer entered, carrying a containment unit with atmospheric shields. Inside was a fluffy golden retriever puppy, about 12 weeks old, wagging its tail and looking around curiously. The reaction was immediate. Several students retreated to the far wall. Plex's crystalline structure clouded entirely. One of the methane breathers released a defensive gas cloud so potent the room's scrubbers activated with an alarm. "What is that?" shrieked a normally soft-spoken Palladian, pointing a trembling tendril at the puppy. "It has exposed teeth and forward-facing eyes," cried another student. "That's a predator's visual arrangement." "It's just a puppy," Jake said, trying to sound reassuring. "His name is Buddy." He's friendly. Professor Xanthar had retreated to the ceiling, her body coiled tightly around a support beam. Mr. Harrison, your specimen appears to be a carnivore with killing appendages. Well, technically yes, but it has claws. Trellis's eye stalks were fully retracted now, leaving only tiny nubs visible. You promised no claws. They're not really claws, Jake protested. More like toenails. And look how cute he is. The puppy chose that moment to let out an enthusiastic bark, causing 3 students to activate their personal emergency shields and another to lose consciousness entirely. It roars. Someone shrieked. That's just how they vocalize, Jake explained desperately. It's actually a form of communication. He's saying hello. Bezit day. Professor Xanthar's tail was now wrapped around her body in a protective coil. Mr. Harrison, please begin your presentation while maintaining strict containment protocols. Jake nodded and turned to his slideshow, trying to ignore the palpable fear in the room. So, Canis familiaris is a species that has co-evolved with humans for approximately 30,000 years. As he spoke, he noticed the puppy pawing at the containment field, whimpering slightly. Those big brown eyes looked so sad, trapped in that small space. They're highly social animals, Jake continued, and form strong bonds with their human companions. They're actually genetically predisposed to understand human gestures and emotional cues better than any other non-human species. The containment field flickered briefly, a standard recalibration that happened every few minutes. In that split second, the puppy, obviously smarter than Jake had given him credit for, made his move. A golden blur shot through the momentary gap, and suddenly Buddy was free in the classroom. Chaos erupted. Containment breach. Screamed the security system. Class 12 predator loose. This is not a drill. The classroom descended into pandemonium. Students scrambled in all directions, some activating personal shields, others attempting to squeeze into emergency evacuation tubes designed for species half their size. Trellos had produced so much defensive mucus that an entire corner of the room was now a slip hazard. Professor Xanthar was firmly plastered to the ceiling, issuing contradictory orders. Remain calm. Evacuate immediately. Stand still. Run. Run. Meanwhile, Buddy the puppy, delighted by this exciting new game, bounced around the room, tail wagging furiously. To him, the fleeing aliens were clearly playing an elaborate version of chase. He's harmless, Jake shouted, trying to catch the energetic ball of fur. He just wants to play. It has targeted me for consumption. Shrieked Plex as Buddy pounced playfully in their direction. The crystalline being vibrated at such a high frequency that small fractures appeared across their surface. Jake lunged and missed the puppy by inches. He doesn't want to eat you. You're literally made of minerals. Buddy changed direction, spotting Glix huddled under a desk. The multi-limbed Arcturian froze in terror as the puppy approached, sniffed curiously, and then licked one of their fronds. Glix's reaction was surprising. It didn't bite me, they said wonderingly. The saliva contains no digestive pre-enzymes or paralyzing agents. Of course not, Jake said, taking advantage of Buddy's momentary distraction to scoop him up. I told you, he's friendly. The puppy squirmed in his arms, trying to lick Jake's face while wagging his tail so hard his entire back end wiggled. That motion Professor Xanthar observed from her ceiling perch. Is it a threat display? It's called wagging, Jake explained, struggling to hold the wriggling puppy. It means he's happy. Dogs use tail positions to communicate emotions. Fascinating, murmured the professor, slowly unwinding herself. A predator that displays its emotional state publicly, creating potential vulnerability. Buddy barked again, but this time the sound didn't trigger mass panic. The students who hadn't managed to escape were watching cautiously from various hiding spots. May I observe more closely? Asked Zephyr, drifting tentatively forward. Jake nodded, maintaining a firm grip on the puppy. Sure. Let him sniff your whatever passes for a hand first so he can get to know you. Zephyr extended a gaseous tendril. Buddy sniffed enthusiastically, then licked it, his tongue passing partly through the gaseous being. It attempted to consume me, Zephyr exclaimed, but more with fascination than fear. No, that's how dogs greet friends, Jake explained. It's a sign of affection. Affection? From a predator? Professor Xanthar had descended halfway down the wall now. Unprecedented. Slowly, other students emerged from hiding. Trellos remained firmly behind an overturned desk, but extended one hesitant eye stalk to watch. Humans have selectively bred dogs for thousands of years, Jake explained, gaining confidence as the atmosphere shifted from terror to cautious curiosity. They've evolved alongside us as companions, protectors, and working partners. They're one of the few species on Earth that can read human facial expressions and understand pointing gestures. You're saying you've domesticated apex predators as companions? Asked Glix, still seeming stunned by the concept. Well, wolves weren't exactly apex predators, but yeah, that's the idea. We have lots of domestic animals on Earth. Do they all maintain predatory features? Professor Xanthar inquired, now fully descended to floor level, though still maintaining a safe distance. Most do, Jake admitted. Cats still have claws and hunting instincts. Horses can kick with enough force to shatter bones. Even our birds can peck pretty hard. The class collectively shuddered. Yet you live alongside these creatures? Voluntarily? Trellos had emerged enough to extend 2 eye stalks now. Jake nodded, scratching Buddy behind the ears. We do. In fact, many Earth cultures consider it unhealthy for children not to grow up with animal companions. This revelation caused such a stir that the emergency response team, arriving in full hazmat gear, found not a scene of carnage but a group of aliens cautiously gathered around a puppy, asking questions about Earth's bizarre human-animal relationships. By the end of class, Buddy had become an unofficial ambassador for Earth fauna. Under Jake's supervision, brave students took turns cautiously petting the puppy, marveling at his soft fur and gentle nature. The contradiction is remarkable, Professor Xanthar noted, finally allowing Buddy to sniff her scaled hand. A creature with all the physical adaptations of a predator, yet behaviorally programmed for companionship. That's Earth for you, Jake said with a shrug. Contradictions everywhere. We've got flowers so beautiful they've inspired poetry for centuries, but some of them can kill you with a single touch. We've got water that covers most of our planet, but many of us never learned to swim. Trellos had gradually inched closer throughout the discussion. Now, in what clearly required immense courage for his species, he extended a trembling appendage toward Buddy. The puppy responded with gentle enthusiasm, licking Trellos's limb. To everyone's surprise, the Exaridian didn't immediately retract into a defensive ball. It's warm, Trellos observed with wonder, and the fur texture is not unpleasant. Professor Xanthar slithered back to her podium. Students, I believe Mr. Harrison's presentation has been unexpectedly educational, while unconventional. She glanced at the containment field, now sporting a puppy-sized hole that maintenance would need to repair. It has provided valuable insight into the unique evolutionary path of Deathworld species. She turned to Jake. You will receive full marks for your presentation, Mr. Harrison. Though in future, perhaps select a specimen less capable of independent locomotion. As the class concluded, students gathered their belongings amidst animated discussions about human-animal relationships. Several approached Jake with questions about other Earth creatures, seemingly having overcome their initial terror. Even more surprising, when Jake returned to his dormitory that evening, he found Trellos already there, surrounded by holographic projections of Earth animals. You're back, Jake noted with surprise. I thought you were staying with your cousin until the project was over. I have reconsidered, Trellos replied, eye stalk swiveling toward Jake. Your canid companion has caused me to reevaluate my preconceptions about Deathworld species. Did you know that Xaridians have no analogous relationship with any other living creature? Our evolution was entirely solitary. Jake plopped down on his bed. So you're not afraid of me anymore? Oh, I remain terrified, Trellos clarified. You're still a bipedal apex predator with bone-crushing jaw strength and alarming stamina. But I now understand that predatory biology doesn't automatically equate to predatory behavior. He gestured to the holograms. I've been researching your cats. They appear to be similar companion species. Similar, yeah, though with more murder tendencies, Jake said with a laugh. They're domesticated, but they've kept more of their wild instincts. The conversation lasted well into the night, with Jake explaining everything from goldfish to guinea pigs. It was the first real roommate bonding they'd experienced. The next morning, Jake was surprised to find himself approached by Professor Xanthar before class. Mr. Harrison, the faculty has been discussing your presentation, she said, her tongue flicking rapidly in what he now recognized as academic excitement rather than fear. We believe there would be educational value in further expositions on Earth fauna. Would you be willing to arrange for additional specimen presentations? Jake grinned. Absolutely. What did you have in mind? Something equally representative of Earth's unique evolutionary pressures, but perhaps with a different adaptive strategy than the canid? I've got just the thing, Jake said, already mentally composing the permit applications. How do you feel about honeybees? They're tiny social insects that make sweet food but can also inject venom if threatened. Professor Xanthar's pupils dilated. Fascinating contradictions indeed. That would be most educational. As she slithered away, Jake couldn't help but smile. Who would have thought that the path to interspecies understanding would be paved by a golden retriever puppy? He pulled out his tablet and began drafting a message to the Earth Embassy about specimen transport. If they thought Buddy caused a stir, wait until they met a sugar glider. Or better yet, a raccoon, the perfect example of Earth's chaotic energy packed into a deceptively cute package. The Galactic Federation didn't know what they were in for.